Hi, everybody. I am TJ. I'm the Director of Partnerships at the Elections Group. For anybody who is joining us for the first time, the Elections Group is a team of election experts supporting election professionals through collaboration, thought leadership, and elevating best practices. Everybody at the Elections Group has worked in a local or state election office, so we know firsthand the challenges faced by election officials. We use our real world experience to help election officials solve those challenges. We are very excited today to have an excellent panel. I am actually going to go straight into intros from folks. We have Grace Gordon here with us, Matt Bernhard, Brian Leach, and Tracy Maps. Each of them is going to go ahead and give us a quick intro right now. Starting with, let's go with Grace first.
Thanks, TJ. Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here with this great panel, and thank you to the Elections Group for having us. My name is Grace Gordon. I am Research Lead and Project Manager at The Turnout, which is a consulting firm at the intersection of public administration and technology. I'm here wearing my hat as a RABET-V program administrator. And I am going to share just a couple of slides after this. My background, I have been in the election space for about 5 years. I started in grad school. I did a master's thesis on threats to election workers resulting from the 2020 election, worked with the California Voter Foundation on that, and then at the Elections and Voting Information Center, formerly at Reed College, now at Portland State. Then I went to the Bipartisan Policy Center, where I did some work at the federal level in elections. And for the past 2 years, I've been at the Turnout, deepening my understanding of election policy and technology.
All right, let's go to Brian.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here and be part of this esteemed panel. My name is Brian Leach. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the South Carolina State Election Commission. I have been here almost 20 years. Working on elections. My background, have a master's in cybersecurity and also a master's in data science.
Excellent. Tracy?
Good morning. Thank you, too, for inviting me to be a part of this discussion. I appreciate it. My name is Tracy Maps. I'm the Vice President of SLI Compliance. We are one of 2 voting system test labs accredited under the EAC and also by NAVLAB. We also work with RABET-V for conducting assessments. I've been with SLI Compliance for almost 18 years now, so quite some time conducting voting system certification testing as well as election technology testing. Thank you.
Amazing. Matt.
All right. Last and least, hi, everybody. My name is Matt Bernhard. I'm the Director of Security and Auditing at Enhanced Voting. We are a election technology provider that does not make voting systems, but we do just about everything else. We just went through the RABET-V program with 3 of our products, so I'm really excited to talk about that. And a little bit about my background. I've been, depending on how you want to count it, I've been in the election space for about 10 years or so. Started in grad school, did a PhD in computer science, my dissertation was on kind of election security from a computer science point of view, and then went from there to a vendor, VotingWorks, to build voting systems. And now I am here at Enhanced Voting, and I'm really excited to be here.
Excellent. I've heard several folks say rabbit. So
Rabbit like the bunny.
Can you give us just a little info at the top of this about RABET-V?
Absolutely. Thank you, TJ. So this webinar is on verification programs. Generally, I know we're going to be talking about them sort of at a high level, and I wanted to just contextualize a little bit about what we're thinking about, and then hear, of course, from the panel on their thoughts. So Starting with what is a verification program, we think about that as a third-party review that's comprehensive. It analyzes and tests a technology to confirm that a system correctly implements the required functionality and security requirements. And that, we kind of think about it like a wellness check for a technology that includes, and it could be either internally a state develops their own verification program or an external program like RABET-V that does the verifying in collaboration with the state. Elements that we think are important. One is that the technology is assessed against best practices in modern software and product development, making sure that the development practices align with what we're seeing as emphasizing security, accessibility, usability. The architecture of that system, including the components that make up that architecture. Something that we think about a lot are the bill of materials of software, what goes into them, and making sure that all those pieces are secure. My colleague John Jurlai has a blog post coming out on that in a bit. Also thinking about product dependencies and assessing those against known vulnerabilities and other common deficiencies, and assessing product performance against those best practices. And it's also important to do all of this fast because the technology that we're going to be talking about today, a lot of it is interconnected. It's changing a lot very quickly. So verifying with speed is a priority in this space. So RABET-V, this is a Center for Internet Security program that's administered and operated by the Turnout. It is a flexible, rapid, cost-effective way to verify any internet-connected enterprise technology. So we have done pollbooks, we've done election night reporting systems. I'll go into all that in a bit, but it basically evaluates a provider's organizational maturity, how they do development, the architecture of the system, and then it also looks at traditional product verification, things such as penetration testing and compliance testing. It applies to any software-based non-voting election system, and we are expanding outside of elections into enterprise technology generally, but these are listed on the screen, the 6 types of systems that we've tested to date. It's modular, which makes it really adaptable and flexible to the needs of a state. We have 3 main assessments: organizational, architecture, and product verification. We also have added functional testing, which I'm hoping Tracy will talk about in a little bit. And that allows states that have specific requirements for verification to work with us, develop tests, and have products tested against those. The organizational and architecture assessments are really interesting because one looks at the processes, one looks at the bones of a system, and these can be done both at the same time or separately based on how many assessors we have available. Who tests these systems? We have independent accredited third-party assessors that we work with. These are from a variety of organizations and entities, including some Fortune 500 companies, cybersecurity firms, and we do have voting system test labs, a voting system test lab as an assessor. They meet basic requirements and eligibility, no conflicts of interest, and also go through training with our program to make sure that they are equipped to conduct these assessments. We currently have 7 accredited assessors, and one of them is the Vistal that Tracy works at. If you want to learn more, please reach out to us via email. We have a monthly newsletter. We're on the web, LinkedIn. Here's all our links. I can throw them in the chat. But I am excited to chat with this group more about verification programs, and that is all I've got for right now.
Thank you, Grace. That was wonderful. I'm going to turn to questions for everybody here, knowing that Grace has kind of done a deep dive, or maybe not a deep dive, but given us a lot of info on RABET-V. I'm wondering, and anybody can jump in and answer this, I just want to know at the simplest level, and please talk to me like I'm 7 or 8 years old, What is a verification program? I have Grace's definition right here: a comprehensive third-party review, analysis, and testing of election technology to confirm that a system correctly implements the required functionality and security requirements. Can anybody just, again, like I'm a child, what are these programs? What are they for? What's the benefit of them?
EJ, I'm happy to jump in just with some of
Perfect.
my thoughts. You know, I feel like certification can be considered a more formal confirmation of compliance to very specific requirements. You know, I think many people are familiar with the voluntary voting system guidelines, the VVSG by the EAC. You know, also, these can be confirmed by the EAC, a state board of elections, or an accredited certification body. The EAC's test and certification program, which includes ESTEP, the Election Supporting Technology Evaluation Program, requires testing to be conducted by accredited voting system test labs. In general, I feel like federal certification testing is based on making sure that systems meet very specific requirements. In comparison, based on my understanding of RABET-V, RABET-V performs more verification testing of election technology to determine whether it appropriately mitigates risk and meets the provider's claims regarding security, usability, accessibility, and other areas like Grace had touched on. Rather than providing a certificate of conformance to a specific version and a release of a product, my understanding is that RABET-V provides reports based on assessments of technology. Some states depend on or require system certification, and in addition, require testing to be conducted to specific jurisdictional requirements. It sounds like RABET-V can also test to some of those jurisdictional requirements. As an independent third party and an accredited voting system test lab, we don't certify products. We verify that systems meet requirements and submit reports to the EAC or to RABET-V, and oftentimes directly to states and to other jurisdictions. As a VSTL, we don't really have a preference, and we don't promote one organization over another. We simply test voting systems and election technology as an independent third party.
Happy to have other folks jump in. Just one question for clarification. There are other verification programs, is that correct?
I think that there are other verification programs. I think that there are some states right now that offer verification. And they do their own verification based on, their own focus, certain priorities, and even, changes or in configurations or certain things that they require of the manufacturer to implement in their systems.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we are a technology industry as much as we are an elections industry, right? And so there are oftentimes non-election specific verifications or certifications that vendors will choose to go after. So SOC 2 is an example, which is the American Institute of Accountants or something like that. They offer, it's a cybersecurity style certification. They also do other kinds. GovRAMP is obviously a really big one in this space as well. All of these programs typically pull from a couple of standards lists, right? CIS maintains a standard for cybersecurity and cyber hygiene. NIST also maintains, the 800 series standards. And so typically all of these programs are kind of pulling from the same standards. And the nice thing about the different programs is they can pull specific standards that apply to a particular industry, right? So for example, for our products, because we're mostly a SaaS vendor, it doesn't make a ton of sense to apply a ton of physical security standards against us because we're relying on our cloud service provider for a lot of the physical security things, but we're also not putting hardware out in the field. So we're not sealing things or, that kind of thing. And if I can just go back to your original question, TJ, for us, the big benefit of verification programs is it lets us show our work, right? Like we like our products, we believe in our products. But if you're a customer or you're, anybody out there, why would you take our word, right? Obviously, we're here to, make money or to sell or whatever. And a verification program gives us the ability to say, like, you don't have to trust us. You can trust these other folks who follow a methodology that's well defined, who do things to defray conflict of interest and that kind of thing. Hopefully all of that kind of makes this industry a lot more robust in terms of what vendors are doing and who's holding them to account and what customers can expect.
That's excellent. Brian, I think on that, as the active election official on this call, can you talk a little bit about what that means, being able to point to some third-party verification? To Matt's point, obviously vendors are trying to sell things to election officials or to other government officials. What does it mean to have that verification?
So for us, when we're talking to our counties and we're talking to the public, and we're a top-down state, so our state, we basically purchase everything from the voting system to the electronic poll books to election night reporting, and we provide those services to our counties. Having some type of verification, something you can stand behind, and not only can improve your security posture, but it is proof of your security posture. And being able to, say that this product's been vetted in this way gives our counties more confidence in it. And along that line, our counties are able to express that confidence, which gives our citizens more confidence in what we're doing.
That's excellent. And you've touched on several of my follow-up questions when it comes to trust, election security posture, and so forth. So I want to throw it to Matt, kind of in the broader election security landscape. You've talked about your credentials within that space. How do these programs fit into one's, I guess, approach or understanding of, again, the broader election security landscape?
Yeah, so I kind of think about this as a really ugly Venn diagram. There's the stuff that we have to do. That's one circle that's, required by statute, or, a customer will put in an RFP that you have to be SOC 2 certified or whatever. There's the stuff that we can do, which is we can get SOC 2 certified, or we can get GovRAMP or RABET-V. There's the stuff that we actually have to do to make us better at security, which, doing things like following best practices, basic hygiene, password hygiene, secure architecture, that kind of stuff. And then there's the stuff that will help public perception of what we do, right? And the tricky part for us is kind of navigating, obviously we want whatever's in the middle of all four of those things. And that's why we think programs like RABET-V are really good, because not only do they help us show our work, not only do they help our customers, perceive us to be, at least give them something to stand on if a voter or somebody comes in with a question about, well, why do you trust these guys? But they also do make us actually better, right? The standards that they choose. And this is, we're going through the GovRAMP process right now as well at enhanced voting, which is a much bigger, heavier lift. But all of those requirements are actually making us better. And this is something that, coming from the academic world, academics find standards really boring for the most part. And so it's been really interesting to me to learn, like, you'll write a research paper about what are best practices, but actually getting that translated into making the market better or making a specific outcome better requires a lot of this process of, okay, we need to put it in a standard. Okay, the standard then needs to be enforced by somebody. Okay, states need to use the standard. And hopefully, I think the trust thing is the hardest part of this, because I think we've learned that trust is not always directly connected to reality in terms of what people are doing. But as long as I can say we made a good faith effort to do everything we can to build a reliable system, and our customers can say they did everything they could to make sure that we weren't lying to them, and so on and so forth, right? I think that's how we're going to make this whole situation better.
That's excellent. Tracy, I think so. We saw a slide from Grace that talked about the different modules. Can you walk us through kind of what this functional testing, I mean, from your perspective as that third party tester, like what does it look like from, you know, cradle to grave, so to speak, of I've got this election adjacent technology. I want to get it, I want to take it through the RABET-V program or a different program. What does it look like to do that? And I imagine there are differences depending on the program, but
Yeah, you know, I can speak to it at a high level. We are an approved assessor under the RABET-V program to conduct architecture assessments and product verification. We had to undergo an application process showing that we meet basic eligibility requirements. But, you know, we have not conducted those assessments yet under RABET-V. We look forward to being able to do that in the future. But to date, we have conducted functional testing on an electronic poll book, which was based on requirements that the state had asked to be tested under RABET-V. This was done as an addendum to the typical RABET-V process. And the goal of the testing that we conducted was to ensure that the issues that occurred in the 2024 election were no longer present during the test execution. So the functional requirements that we tested to under RABET-V for this one e-poll book, it was a handful. It was basically based on discrepancies that were found and then brought to us to verify that those discrepancies had been fixed. And so really that's the testing that we've conducted under the RABET-V program to date.
excellent. Matt or Brian, either from the vendor or election official perspective, same question, but positioned for your respective places. What does it look like as a vendor or as an election official to take part in a program like this?
Well, I can speak for South Carolina. We just about 2 years ago now, we did a pilot program with our voter registration system, which we call BRIMS, Voter Registration and Election Management System. It's a statewide voter registration system that all of our counties use. And you know, before we started talking about RABET-V, we were looking at doing some pretty extensive code updates, because at that point, our code for our system was approaching 12 years old and hadn't had a rewrite. You know, so it needed to be brought forward. And we were looking at ways with our vendor Copus to do that, and trying to figure out what parts to tackle first, where to go, what our map for accomplishing this should look like. And then the RABET-V opportunity came for us. And we kind of, in going through RABET-V, we kind of moved from a rewrite everything type of stance to a stance that allowed us to rank priorities and make a modernization roadmap. And we looked at BRIMS through the 3 layers that RABET-V provided: our practices, the system architecture, and the product itself, so that we could really see our design process and how our aging code created some risk for us. And it allowed us to tackle the big wins that really needed to be done first, like identity and access, improving our MFA. One of the big things that came out of this was we got rid of our legacy MFA, and we moved to Duo and incorporated Duo throughout the system. Duo goes live in our voter registration system tomorrow. So that's going to be a big move for us, and that comes directly from our participation in RABET-V. We also looked at our data protection, our PII, our key rotations, our architecture streams, making sure that everything, since it's a web-based system, was API first and the appropriate boundaries were there, all the way down to our web application firewall and our rate limiting. So it allowed us to take a really deep dive into our system, stage the risks, decide what we wanted to tackle first, harden everything, and come out with a much better system.
Yeah, I think I'll largely echo everything Brian just said. You know, I joined Enhanced Voting. The product had already kind of existed for about a decade by the time I came in. And I don't want to say that we didn't care about security before I got here. We did. It's just it wasn't anyone's dedicated role to think about, right? And when you're in that position, and this is true, like this is literally any organization that has IT infrastructure, right? Coming in and trying to understand the system and understand, well, our devs and our team think that we do things this way. How do I prove that we actually do it that way, right? RABET-V was a really big help, especially the org and the architectural assessments of, well, here's a big spreadsheet that we got to go through line by line, and not only, and this is true for other verification programs, but not only do we have to say we do the thing or do the thing, but also show our work and say, here is our configuration for our password policies or our multi-factor or whatever other, here's how our architecture is configured. And we think, we believe our architecture provides us these security guarantees, and to have someone else look at that and either agree with us or say, actually, you missed a spot over there, was really tremendously helpful. And that's the kind of the thing we really like about RABET-V versus other standards, is that's a much more holistic evaluation than you get. Certainly if you just have like a pen test requirement or something like that, or even like a SOC 2. And then on top of that, they're also doing the product verification where they are also trying to break into your products and trying to find holes. The problem with that is that only, you can only really do that anytime you do it, it's only being done at a point in time, right? And so next week, our code base is going to be different because we've either fixed some bugs or we've added a feature or whatever, or one of our dependencies has updated or had a problem with it that had to change, and so that had to change how we used it. It's always a moving target. And so having those organizational and architectural assessments gave me confidence that when those kinds of things come up, we're going to do the right thing. And then also having the product assessment periodically to be like, hey, you missed this vulnerability here or there, so that we can fix it on the run, has been really helpful for us as well.
I think
Great. Go ahead, Brian.
I think another thing that RABET-V showed us is it also allowed to improve our relationship with our state IT and have more confidence in what they're doing to secure our software. Because in essence, we have to treat them as another vendor, because our voter registration software is running on servers and networks at state IT with all these other agencies. And participating in this process with us, being a partner in this process, state IT were able to learn some things where they were maybe a little bit deficient and can improve on also. And that not only benefited our agencies, but that benefited every agency that they serve. And so it was just going through the process was really good for not only us, but all of our partners and our stakeholders and our vendors.
Grace, I feel like we've said RABET-V several times without coming to you. So we've talked about like interagency cooperation and how having those shared standards can help that. Brian and Matt both mentioned kind of identifying easy or big wins that you can get from going through the process. Can you just describe to us how RABET-V is used? Like I know Matt mentioned a giant spreadsheet, so just walk me through what are the products or the components within it?
Yeah, absolutely. So on our end, on the administrative side, we have baselines that we're pulling from security best practices, from Center for Internet Security Controls, from National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST. So we're updating those as things change, right? As the threat environment develops, as there are new best practices that emerge. Then we have those modules, right? We have architecture, organizational, product verification, and functional testing. And each of these, so for a product that comes in initially, it will go through all of these modules and get assessed. Some of that's interviews, some of that's system testing. We never, we're using tools to test the system. We're not going directly into the source code ever. And then after a product goes through an initial time, it becomes iterative, right? So as software develops, it's changing very quickly. And depending on the change, the product can go back through RABET-V in a shorter period of time. So perhaps the organizational assessment won't need to be repeated. Perhaps there are places where the process becomes more efficient. That's not to say we aren't doing a very thorough and deep assessment each time, but just knowing that if we take a look at the organization development practices and they score high, we're not going to need to do as comprehensive of a check the next time, as long as nothing's changed. So yeah, it becomes iterative. It becomes streamlined and cost efficient as well. And I really like what Brian said about the strengthening of relationships. I think that verification programs should be and should be dedicated towards building relationships, making sure that the folks who have the expertise are connecting with the folks building the things, and making sure that vendors are talking to state offices, they're talking to IT offices. So I think our hope is that RABET-V is that relationship building entity.
Thank you, Grace. Tracy, as we're talking about that relationship building or that interagency cooperation, I'm just wondering how much of that is facilitated by the work of third-party verifiers or reviewers like yourself, or is that something that's largely left to the agency? You give them the report, you say, here's where you are coming up short, good luck, or is that a more cooperative process through a company like SLI?
Yeah, we work hard to maintain our independence. So, using the word partnership is something that we try to steer away from. We also don't provide any kind of consultation on the development of a product. So really what we are doing as an independent third-party test lab is looking to test a system to requirements that have been given to us, or we can also help in developing requirements, and performing more of a verification as well. But we don't work with a vendor or work with our clients to come up with how best to resolve any kind of discrepancies that are found. We might perform some security work where we could identify some mitigation, maybe some controls, but we do not participate in any consultation or development.
That's excellent.
That answers the question.
No,
and that's part of why you want a third party, to come in and conduct testing, and to provide, a pass-fail, right? That's why you want that third party, so that there's none of that subjectiveness that comes along with it.
amazing. I don't know if Matt or Brian have anything to add on that, just generally. Otherwise, we can jump to the next question. Or Grace, of course.
I would just add that for each assessment in RABET-V, the test results are rolled up into a report that is given to the technology provider, and we thought that was important to go to the technology provider, who can then share it with the state over a Zoom call or what have you. But in that report, are the description of functional tests and the assessments, as well as the test results and a test plan for that continuous improvement.
Yeah, and I'll plus one Tracy's comment about independence. It doesn't do us any good to pat ourselves on the back, right? And it doesn't do anybody else any good either. So we firmly believe that's really important.
Excellent. Brian, anything else?
I think everybody said it well.
I love it. Let's see. I've got one. Matt, you mentioned, kind of just reiterated that these programs make you better, make your products better. Can you talk about kind of from inception how these types of programs influence product development more broadly? Are these sources of innovation, or are they things that you got to figure out how to work around?
I think it depends. I've definitely spoken with other colleagues who they can point to a direct example of this requirement came down, and so we actually had to change. We had to switch our programming language to something that was memory safe, for example, right? For us, I don't know that I have a something that I can pinpoint about that, but it does help us if we make a good decision in our product architecture, it helps confirm that that was a good decision, right? So, for example, for us, we're primarily a containerized workload, which basically just means all of our software runs in very small self-contained units that we can deploy basically anywhere. And you get a lot of benefits with that. It's security by default, basically. So if someone were to, let's say, get shell access on one of our products, all they would have access to is that container, right? And we can throw that container away and get a new one. Wouldn't be the end of the world. If we want to do updates, we can just roll out a new container, for example. That helped us score really well in the architecture portion of RABET-V, and also obviously helped us with the product assessment because it made it harder for the pen testers to break in. And so when we do that kind of a thing, it does create a sort of a positive feedback loop for us. We're like, okay, we are on the right track. We do need to keep leaning into particular technologies. And the thing I'm really excited to see is as the landscape changes, as practices, best practices change, or as we overall mature as an industry and as a broader technical ecosystem, I'm excited to see where the new baselines for RABET-V push us to go.
Anybody else on that one? Just on what you've seen generally? All right. I think we may have covered this a little bit, but can we talk? I know the EAC's VVSGs are something that are talked about a lot. Again, for anybody, can we talk about the difference between the certification from programs or standards like that versus these other types of non-voting tech verification programs?
I'm happy to take a stab at that one, unless Grace, you want to go. Yeah, the VVSG, the tough thing with voting systems is that they tend to be kind of frozen in time when they are certified, right? And that's part of the way the VVSG was written. It's somewhat a legacy of how things were done 20 years ago, and part of just the practical realities of deploying a large hardware fleet to the field that isn't connected to the internet, right? You can't roll out patches, and even if you could, then you would have to go through the certification process and all that again. And so the big challenge with VVSG is that it freezes the system in time. And so if you do find problems with the system, the vendor then has to go back through the certification process. I'm hoping, we haven't seen it yet because 2.0 is new, but this is part of the reasons for the changes to 2.0 was things like component certification, where if you just change one part of your system, you don't have to take the whole thing back through. De minimis changes, I think those requirements have been relaxed a little bit on what counts as a de minimis change and that kind of thing. But even once you do that, even once you get it all the way through recertified with the new stuff, you still have to go out into the field, with USB sticks to, however many jurisdictions you're in and update your software, right? Which is still a huge pain. And it's one of the major benefits of the non-voting system technology. For pretty much all cases, it can be internet connected. But that also brings a whole new set of challenges, right? Like now Russia and China are on your back door, right? Like they can get in from anywhere in the world if you're online. And so the certification programs do need to account for that, and they need to be quicker moving, because we need to, if we have a log4j or a oh man, what was the the compression library problem, a takeover problem from last year, if that kind of thing crops up, we need to fix our system ASAP. And we don't want to leave our customer holding the bag of, well, you updated the software, but we can't use it now because we're pegged to this old standard and all that stuff, right? And so I do think a lot of the new standards are much better at accommodating for kind of the ever-changing, churning world of online software and of especially software as a service.
I
Jay,
completely agree with Matt. Oh, sorry, Tracy. Do you want to go ahead?
no, you go ahead. I just thought I'd chime in and, I agree with you, Matt. I think that one of the main differences that needs to be considered when testing voting systems versus other election technology is like what you said, is that under the VVSG, voting systems must implement an air gap between the voting system and external networks or external devices, which also include, which can include e-poll books, public networks, cellular technology, or connectivity. E-poll books, voter registration systems, and other election technologies, like you said, are often connected to external networks, requiring additional types of testing, including network and telecommunication security testing. Most voting systems undergo certification testing to the VVSG, which is required under HAVA. And in addition to physical and software security testing, it includes a review of the software and also hardware testing. Voting systems are also subjected to additional state requirement testing as well. And really, like you had said, until recently, there weren't standards for testing other election technologies. RABET-V and the EAC both currently offer testing for electronic poll books, where RABET-V, they also offer right now verification for other types of election software.
Yeah, completely agree. And Tracy is the expert here on seeing the differences between voting systems and non-voting systems. I think Matt and Tracy both described it perfectly, in that like this internet connectivity adds additional risk to these products and requires a different type of testing because of the software involved, because of those threats. The software is going to need a little bit more of an agile approach to verification, which means that we're going to want to be able to act quickly if there is an issue or a known vulnerability that may impact a technology product. With RABET-V, we based part of our organizational assessment on the software assurance maturity model. So really looking to that software sector to solicit those best practices on how to evaluate whether a product is secure and has those organizational policies in place to be able to make updates and develop securely in real time.
Brian, anything there? I don't want to leave you out.
No, from a state perspective, it's really important for states to follow federal certifications for voting systems and their own state certification practices and policies. But RABET-V provides outstanding opportunities to verify and vet everything else that's out there from a non-voting standpoint. And I myself am really excited to see pollbooks going through this process. Really excited to see ENR products go through this process, and I'm excited to see our own voter registration system go through this process.
Excellent. Folks, feel free to use the Q&A function. I see we do have one question in there. Get to those in a second. Maybe this will be our final group question. Stepping back a little bit from verification programs and looking more broadly, this is for anybody. What advice do you have for state and local election officials who are looking to deepen the security protocols of their election infrastructure?
EJ, I can step in and throw out a few things.
Love it. Thank you, Tracy.
Basically, I feel like the most important thing that you can do is to follow the recommended best practices for deployment of election systems from the manufacturers, as well as developing best practices based on recommendations from organizations like NIST, CIS, and the EAC. State and local election officials aiming to strengthen the security of their election infrastructure should consider adopting a layered defense in depth strategy. This includes implementing things like multi-factor authentication, encrypted communications, and strict access controls to protect both physical and digital assets. Network segmentation and traffic inspection are essential for isolating election systems and detecting threats, while remote access could be tightly controlled with encryption and device compliance checks. Something that we recommend is, officials should also maintain a detailed inventory of internet connected technologies and enforce rigorous patching and software integrity protocols as they can. A robust security and election awareness program will go a long way in bolstering confidence in the election process for both the public and election officials.
And I can say, I think where we are nationwide compared to where we were 5 or 10 years ago at the state, especially the state level, but even the local level, is so like light years ahead of where we were. One of my primary tasks at Enhanced Voting is filling out questionnaires when we go out to RFP or when we win a contract. Oftentimes, the state IT office will send me, basically a list of NIST controls and ask, do you do all of these things and can you provide evidence? And that is great, but it's also a lot of work, right? Both for us and for them. And so I do think adopting a program like RABET-V or SOC 2 requirements or GovRAMP or whatever in place of that would make their lives a little bit easier if they dig into, as long as the requirements that they would otherwise have used align well, or adding the functional testing that Tracy mentioned and Grace mentioned. The other thing I would caution against is pinning like versions of standard. If you have statute or if you have policy, pinning a specific version of a standard or something in a way that's difficult to change later, can make it difficult for you. Again, this is, I think, a thing we learned from the VVSG is that if you pick a specific version of a standard or that kind of thing, and the standard changes in a way, it can be hard to get, if you go out to bid for a new product, it can be hard to get any bids because everybody's on the new standard, not the old standard. Or it'll lock you into, I don't know. Hopefully I don't have to explain that too much why it's a pain. But yeah, I do think requiring, standards for vendors is a really important thing, and making us check, making us show our work is a big leg up.
I would add that, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There are a lot of resources all around you to deepen your security protocols and security knowledge. RABET-V is one of these resources, but I think looking to other states, talking to other states and officials, having conversations in your association, looking to other sectors are all really great ways to learn more. I know that election officials are wearing a lot of hats at all times, and security maybe is your favorite or maybe isn't your favorite. But I think that there's a wealth of information around us on how to do this, how to approach it, looking to states and that sort of thing. And if you're looking for a flexible program or just want to have a conversation about the possibilities, please feel free to reach out.
Brian, any advice? Then we can run the Q&A.
I think one of the advice I would have is when you're doing RFPs and you're going out to RFP for election products, it might be hard to bake a framework like this into the RFP as a requirement, but you can add it to that list of questions that your state asks of the vendors. And I think the smart vendors are going to start, moving towards these programs, and will do that more once they start seeing these types of questions in RFPs.
Excellent. All right, we've got some questions in here. Let's start with, we've got an AI question. Everybody loves AI questions. Does anyone have any thoughts on how AI could affect verification testing? Tracy, you're not AI, right?
Not AI. No, and in fact, we've steered away from AI at this point.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, that's a really, really broad question in so many ways. I definitely think one of the interesting challenges might come as vendors start using it in their products more. We aren't at the moment. I don't know that we have any plans to anytime soon. But I definitely, it could make evaluating, under current standards pretty difficult if, the outputs of a system become non-deterministic or something like that because they're using AI, or if, there's a whole other class of risks associated with using like large language models that would probably need to be added to the standards if that, if a vendor is using AI in a particular way.
I think if I can throw out too, our vendor or manufacturer proprietary information needs to be of the utmost importance. And so figuring that out with using any kind of AI tool is a bit tricky. And so that's something that we, want to be very careful of, and why we have chosen not to go the route of AI is because, we need to make sure that our clients' information is protected.
From a verification perspective, and I want to be careful here because I'm a policy person, not a technologist, but we do have tools that can detect the AI models that are used in a technology product. And we're not saying it's good or bad. We're just, doing our due diligence. But I think one of our goals going forward is to develop some sort of module around AI used in products and development for the RABET-V process.
Right. Let's go to another. Tracy, there's a question in here. I don't know if this is something that you're able to answer, and if not, we'll quickly move to the next question. What state did you do e-pollbook functional testing in or for?
Sorry, I was on mute. I would let the RABET-V folks answer that just because we were doing testing under that program. But I can say that we've done e-pollbook testing for states directly outside of just the EAC and for RABET-V. We've done testing for a number of states who have develop their own requirements, but in regards to the one that I referred to here, I'll let Grace, you speak to that, if that's something you can share.
We're not able to share. I'm sorry, yeah.
All right, well, let's move on from that then. Brian, I see a question in here that I think is, well, anybody can answer it, but let's start with Brian. What's your thought process on state level RFPs, which, Brian, you have lots of experience with, and including county partners in the process?
So for us, that is very important. I can put in requirements for the design and modernization of, say, BRIMS, our voter registration system, all day long, but I am not a local county election official who's, using this system every day in day in and day out. So they have lots of excellent input into the business flows within the system, and even down to the UX user experience within the system. Because at the end of the day, if our system doesn't work for them, it doesn't work. And so we do lots of bringing them on board and doing user focus groups and such forth like that. We have even put counties on our RFP committees. And so it's not just the state doing the evaluations, it's also the people who are going to be actually using the system.
Matt, anything there from you? I guess even more generally, just about understanding that technology providers in the election space have to serve jurisdictions of all different sizes and shapes. What type of collaboration do you think is right? Do you think is good as it comes to, or when it comes to developing these technologies?
I think the only answer I can give you is it depends. We're currently we work with states with all manner of governance, whether it's a top-down state like South Carolina or a bottom-up state like Michigan, where I'm located. And that, can cause some interesting challenges for us as a provider, because some of the assumptions that we may have baked into our products early on when we were only in a few states may not hold up anymore if we just expanded to Michigan. And Michigan has 3 tiers of elections administration here, where most states only have 2, for example. So that's definitely the kind of thing where for us, it's really important to understand the lay of the land. And then from a state or a county government point of view, I imagine it's, I think coordination between the two is really, really important, and a local as well. So that, you don't want to get into a situation where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, right? If, I can point to an example in Michigan where we contract with counties for some products and we contract with the state for other products. And that's definitely a place where the counties and the state both need to be aware of what the other are doing, so that, they can be aware of any changes that we need to make. They can get out ahead of them before deadlines get closer or anything like that. So I think it's really important.
Excellent.
I would echo that. Oh, sorry, JJ.
No, go ahead.
I think that the collaboration between county and municipality and state is really important, especially for RFPs. We do have some language that we are happy to provide folks with on including verification programs like RABET-V in an RFP. But yeah, I just completely agree with Matt that, like, having counties involved in that process and helping to just think through the requirements that are necessary for a vendor is just so important.
All right. Well, I know we have a couple more questions in the Q&A, but we are at time. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. Brian, Tracy, Matt, Grace, thank you for taking the time out. I have certainly learned a lot from this conversation, and I look forward to follow-up conversations. But most of all, I thank you all for your time. I thank our participants for their time. If anybody has any questions, the Elections Group's inbox is always open at support@electionsgroup.com. And we look forward to seeing you for another conversation soon. Thank you, everybody.